warned that recent events in California and Indonesia are nothing compared to the megaquake that will strike our Earth. They say it is like ringing a bell. One earthquake strikes on one part of our planet and it is felt throughout the bell. We might not feel it standing on the Earth, but the Earth feels it, and it leads to larger events. There is a building of pressure that they say will be released with a megaquake in our not too distant future. Seismologists are warning the Western world that it is only a matter of time before a large and extremely dangerous earthquake strikes both Japan and California again. David Galloway, a seismologist at the British Geological Survey, remember these are government organizations, these aren't just people on the internet saying that it's coming, studies earthquakes all over the world. He's warning that it is only a matter of time before a big one strikes again. We expect a big one to happen in Japan and another one in California. Stress has been building up over the years, he says. It's like pulling an elastic band. This is a quote from this seismologist. If you keep pulling it, it will snap. Due to the way that Earth's tectonic plates push and pull against each other, the size of earthquakes is getting easier to predict. But not when. They say a big one is coming and we need to be prepared. People are getting very scared at this because they have been told for so long that they don't need to do anything. They don't need to take their own personal responsibility. They can sit back, relax, and call 911 when a disaster takes place. But they quickly saw, even with this most recent event in California, the 7.1 that was downgraded to a 6.9 over the 4th of July weekend, they recently saw that emergency services cannot handle even the sheer number of calls that come in. Their triage plans cannot stop them from allocating resources where they are not needed and having them ready for when they are needed. And they turned toward the individual and said, you need to go check on your aunt. You need to go check on your loved ones. You need to make sure that they are safe. And people are getting scared because they've been told for so long that they don't need to do any of this. They can just go about their lives thinking about what the next television show that they want to watch is, not considering that they have only that day's worth of food inside of their fridge, not thinking about how to cook that food if they click the stove and the power doesn't come on or the gas doesn't run. And now they're scared. The 7.1 that killed 360 people in Mexico, the Japanese tsunami, the 6.9 earthquake in New Zealand, and other events are just recent examples, according to the seismologists. Seismological activity isn't just limited to that area. Turkey, Greece, Indonesia, Chile, these are areas that some megaquakes can take place, while seismologists are certain that there will be another, quote, big one in places such as California and Japan. They can't say when. What we can tell you is that it's going to happen. We can advise on what should be built and what shouldn't be built. Like nuclear power plants. They say that some are already over fault lines or near them, and there's nothing they can do about them because the government will not move where they are. But they can say where new ones should not be built. We expect a big one at some point, but I can't tell you when it will be exactly. An 8.2 earthquake on the San Andreas Fault could be devastating to cities such as California, Los Angeles, where it runs very close to densely populated areas. The intensity of an earthquake and the ramifications for the place it strikes is dependent on a number of variables, he says. Big ones have already happened. A 9.5 in Chile in 1960 killed 1,600 people. The strongest earthquake ever destroyed nearly half of the buildings in the Chilean city in 1964, when that took place. The 9.2, Great Alaskan Earthquake, 1964, the most powerful earthquake in U.S. history, lasted nearly 5 minutes. And of course, the megaquake in Japan killed 20,000 people with a subsequent tsunami and nuclear disaster. The U.S. Geological Survey produced a report which examines the implications of a megaquake. It estimates that 7.8, so not too much bigger than the one that just took place, but they say that it takes a number of 7.1s, even just to enter the magnitude of a 7.8 or an 8.2. A 7.8 could cause 1,800 deaths and cause $213 billion worth of economic loss, could cause people to remain homeless for months on end. The big one is coming. According to geologists, a large megaquake on the San Andreas Fault is overdue. We're hundreds of years past when they expected it, they said, if you look at empirical data. Seismic activity on the San Andreas Fault would trigger a devastating earthquake by the year 2013. It will. They're saying it will be here by the year 2030. But they don't know when between now and then. We've only got 10 years until then. But they don't know the moment that it will strike. But they suspect it's within the next 10 years. The southern San Andreas Fault has typically seen large earthquakes every 150 years, according to the survey. And since the last largest earthquake occurred in 1857, the southern segment of the fault is considered a likely location. They're seeing a buildup of tension. A 7.9 in San Francisco in 1906 means there's a slightly lower chance in that part of the state. Many residents in California are acutely aware of the threat, but most hide their heads in the sand. I would honestly say it's something Californians are cognizant of, some say. We're standing on two different sides of a fault line, and it feels scary. There's a 2% chance that it will strike this year, a megaquake. One should be preparing for the big one. According to the USGS, such an event would likely be preceded by a series of increased seismic activity. What are we seeing right now? Increased seismic activity. Going forward, this is more what we should be thinking about. I don't think anyone's prepared. This is according to seismologists. They're telling you people aren't prepared enough. Rachel Higgins, a graduate student in California, said that, like all Californians, she's heard of the big one. And it's a legend. She admitted she hasn't prepared for it at all. And now people like this are afraid. They're scared because they've been told they don't need to be prepared. And now that the moment is coming, they're scared. That is what's going to happen in every major disaster. The majority are told they don't need to be prepared. They don't need to be prepared for this. They don't need to take self-responsibility. An event strikes, and they lose their minds. And they lose their minds because they've been lied to, and they're suddenly awoken. They're suddenly taken out of this deep sleep of ill self-responsibility, and they have to find their own food. They have to cook their own food by different means. They have to start a fire, and if they don't start a fire, they're not going to eat. They have to find water and make it safe to drink. They might have to drink feces-laden water. How are they going to make that safe to drink? You only have 3 days until you die without water. That's scary for a lot of people because they haven't even thought of these things. They haven't even taken them into any sort of consideration. PTSD. Hundreds of scared residents from surrounding communities are reported to have stormed into a town hall meeting this weekend in order to discuss their fears and their concerns. Let's start recovering now. That's Police Chief Jed McLaughlin explaining as he attempts to calm down the crowd. People are there, rushing into town meetings, saying they're afraid. Ridgecrest Regional Hospital is open again, the police chief says. He urged residents to start re-entering their houses and asked them to recognize the emotional toll of earthquakes. PTSD is a real thing, and we are all suffering it. This is according to the police chief, trying to calm the individuals in the city. People who are scared, people who say, why didn't you do more to prepare us for this? Why aren't we more prepared? They're entitled. They want to be handed their preparedness on a platter. They don't want to take any self-responsibility for this. And now they're afraid. Officials reminded residents to keep using boiled water if they can't access bottled water, out of concerns that the quake's cracked water remains, creating a risk of contamination between feces, between human excrement water, and your water source. The gas in some buildings, particularly certain communities, is still not working. The region's mayor is instructing residents to keep checking on their friends, their families, and their neighbors. Earlier in the day, a trio of researchers assessed the damage in the buildings, noting that the earthquake hit that area hard, particularly because the walls in the buildings are not reinforced with steels or other material to keep them upright during an earthquake. It looks like most of these structures were built in the 30s and 40s, so it makes sense, according to engineers, that they weren't ready for this. Millions of people in the area self-reported on social media and continue to, that the entire city remains on edge, as residents find it difficult to return to normal amid growing worry and concerns about their safety, as over 4,000 aftershocks have shaken the city. So the event happened. Of course they were scared, but they said, hey, this happens. Then the aftershocks came. And then a larger earthquake came, and then they saw their cars rolling, they saw the pool water shaking, they saw the lights in their house rocking back and forth, they saw the power go out, the gas didn't turn on, they don't have safe water to drink, and this builds up and builds up and builds up, and they become so afraid that they don't know what to do, and they snap. They turn to wherever they can, and that's local officials. They start calling 911. It bogs down the 911 numbers. Imagine if this event was larger than just an earthquake that did not have a large loss of life. Imagine if it was a serious event, one that is coming, according to seismologists. Some people are so worried that they are refusing to sleep indoors. This was so awakening of what an earthquake can do, according to one resident. So now some of them are afraid to sleep inside. Flavio Montes and his family are so rattled that they've decided to sleep outside of a Red Cross shelter, not even at their home. They said that their daughters will cry when they go back inside. We ended up coming out here because my kids went in. Every time a little shake would happen, they would just start panicking. So now the parents can't reinforce the safety and preparedness in their children. How often do these mega quakes strike? Every few hundred years. The earthquakes that have happened in the meantime are devastating to a local area, but instead of magnitude 8, they're magnitude 7s. It's a logarithmic scale. So an 8 has about 30 times the energy of a magnitude 7. Some ask, don't smaller quakes help to dissipate some of that energy? Those little earthquakes, including the 7s, let only a tiny amount of energy out compared to the big ones. It would take 10 magnitude 7 earthquakes to let out this strain of energy as a magnitude 8. It would take 10 of them to hit 1/8. So that 7.1, you say, okay, it wasn't too bad. An 8 is 10 times stronger. An 8.2, stronger than that. A 9.0, completely devastating. Does that mean that the next big one is inevitable? Yes, according to seismologists. When we look at history of the fault, we can see big earthquakes have happened many times over in the past few thousand years. It's inevitable. It's coming. We just don't know when. Is it going to be tomorrow, or is it going to be 30 years from now? What kind of